So for a question like this, this is question C3 on page 252. I'm just going to put the page here. It's asking you to discuss how you can use the table to find the m and the b in the equation y equals mx plus b. Well, if I rewrite this equation, I really want you to understand that we're looking for the m, and the m, we discussed it yesterday. It's the rate of change, or it's the something per one something. So the constant of variation is another word for the m. And then another way to remember what the m is something per, and it has to be one something, okay? So I really want you to remember what the m is. It's really, really, really important. The plus b is just any additional values. So it could be an additional cost. It could be an additional, I don't know, anything that's additional and that it doesn't say it's something per something. That's what b is. So what we call that is an initial value, okay? Which means that if you have a partial variation at the beginning, your initial value, when x equals 0, it will not be y equals 0. And it's proof right here in the table that when x equals 0, y is actually equal to 10, which means that the graph is going to start, when it's x equals 0, it's going to start up here somewhere at 10. It's not going to start at 0, 0 because there is an initial value. So now that you hopefully understand what I just said, we need to find what m and b is according to the table. So if we have this table, to find the initial value, to find where the graph or the table starts, you have to make sure that you go to x equals 0. So this table, when x equals 0, starts at y equals 10. So let's write that down. The initial value is 10 because this is where x equals 0. So initial means that that's where x equals 0 at all times. And that's why I make you put 0 in your table always. If it's partial, it'll be 0 and a different number. But if it's direct, it'll be 0 and 0 for y as well. So that's how we find the initial value. That's the easiest part. Now, for the m, which is your rate of change, which is your something per one something, or your constant of variation. Those are all words that represent the same thing. What I want you to do is put your patterns. So if you're asked to make a graph, for example, I always want you to have at least the table drawn as well. They may not ask for it, but you have to put it in your work. So you always need to create a table. Always, always, always. In this case, it's +1. So this means that y increases by 14 every time x increases by 1. What I don't want you to do is take this value right here. It is not increasing by 14, or it's not 14 at 1, sorry, is what I'm trying to say. So what happens here is because your graph starts at, okay, I just made a mistake here. I just noticed what I was trying to say. It's not actually +14 here. I hope that you guys noticed while I was making that. It's actually +4. Which makes more sense because at 1, it's at 14. So it's not increasing by 14 every single time you're increasing x by 1. It's increasing by 4 every single time x increases by 1. So what you do to find the m is you take how much it's increasing for the y's. So you go +4, and you divide it by how much it's increasing for the x's. So that's how you find that number. You need to make sure that that number is something for every one something. So that means that y is increasing by 4 every time x increases by 1. Okay, so it's important to be able to tell that because we need to make sure that it's by 1. It can't be at 1, the y value is 14. You have to make sure that you have something per one something. Okay, so that's how you do that on a table in order to find your m. So let's just write that down. The m value is 4 And that's because of this reason right here. Every time y increases by 4, x increases by 1. So I'm just going to put the explanation down here. Because every time y increases by 4, x increases by 1. So that's your something per one something. And you just need to make absolutely sure that it's something per one something. And I know I repeat myself a lot, but it's important that you understand that. Okay, so that's how you do that from a table without giving any words. Okay, so for number 5, it says that the cost of renting a bus is $250. So cost for the bus is $250. And there's an additional cost of $4 per student. So what we need to do first is identify the variables. I hope that you did that. If you did not, just please add it to your work. So to identify the variables, we're going to we've got some money involved here. So we're basically going to have a cost or a pay, some type of charge. I want to make sure that you understand which one to pick. So in this case, if you read the question, it says that there are costs. So we're going to use C, or let C represent the cost. And don't forget that it's in dollars. Now the next one is a little bit harder. I don't want you to use S for student because we can't measure students, but we can measure the amount of students. So I'm going to use A. Let A represent the amount of students. Now, if you do use S, because they don't tell you which letter to use, you can say that S can represent the amount of students, but don't put S represents the students. Okay, now that we have our variables identified, they want us to identify the fixed cost. Now, the fixed cost is a cost that does not change. So the fixed cost in this case is $250. The variable cost is the one that's going to change. And the reason it changes is because the cost depends on the number of students that are going to this field trip. So in this case, the variable cost is $4 per student. Okay, so then they want us to write an equation. Oh, they do give us the letters. They want us to use C for the cost in dollars and N for the number of students. So you actually have to change that, and that might happen. You might have to erase your work or read the question first before trying to do it. So N is the number of students and C is the cost in dollars. So I told you I do not want you to make an equation without having a table. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Number of students is going to be on the left, or amount of students, it doesn't really matter. And like I said in class, the cost is normally always on the right because that's the one that depends on the number of students. So for 0 students, if 0 students go, the cost is not $0 because the school has to pay for the bus no matter what. So that cost, the initial value, initially for 0 students, it's $250. Now, I like to go up by ones. You can really go up by whatever you want. But for the cost for 1 student, it's not $4. Okay? Because you're not just paying $4, you're paying $4 plus another $250 for the bus. So the cost for 1 student will be $254. The cost for 2 students is just another $4. For 3 students, $262. And then finally, for 4 students, is $266. I would accept this table. I just want you to get used to how to find the rate or the constant of variation based on a table. So we're going to put our patterns in here. And our patterns for the cost is that it's increasing by $4 every time. Again, if you don't have this, can you please put it into your chart? Okay, plus $4. And on the left, it's increasing by 1 student every time. Now, realistically, you won't only have 1 student or 4 students going on a field trip, but this is okay for a table. If I look at this table, I can see that it's $4 for 1 student. So I'm going to write that down. It's $4 for 1 student. So I really don't need to do any other work. because I already have the something per one something, which means that's the rate. It's $4 every time you increase by one student. So M is 4. So if you go to do your equation, it'll be the cost is $4 per student. Now you have to realize what letter you're using for number of students, and it's N in this case. And there's an additional cost of $250. And that comes from Y equals MX plus B, which means that your B, which is your initial cost in this case, is $250. Okay, so the letter I used for Y is C, the letter I used for X is N, and then you just go ahead and substitute the M, which is your rate, something per one something. What I don't want you to do is write that the cost is 254N plus 250, because this would mean that it's $254 per student. And that's not the case. It's not $254 per student. It's $4 per student. And I got that 254 up here in my table by going to 1. So if you do that for partial variation, it is wrong. Okay? So I'm just going to put a big X on that. I need you to realize that the cost is $4 per student plus an additional cost of $250. So I'm just going to write that on the side. The cost is $4 per student plus an additional $250. Okay, so that's the little sentence that describes the work that we just did in the equation. So if you're able to put it in words, most likely you'll get the equation correct. Okay? So that's what that means. Now they want us to find the equation to determine the total cost if 25 students attend. So that's question C. I'll just put that the equation is question B. So for question C, to use the equation to determine the total cost. So that means we need to rewrite the equation, which is 4N plus 250. And we need to find, it says, the total cost. So we're looking for the cost. So we're going to put C equals question mark, which means I have to have the N. And the N represents the number of students. In this case, they want 25 students. So what we do, we go and substitute where the N is. So when we substitute, I hope that you remembered to use brackets. Okay. You fill in the rest of the equation, and you find the C. Now, in order to find the C, you have to use BEDMAS. 4 times 25 is going to be 100. 100 plus 250 is going to be a final cost of $350. Now, because it's a word problem, you have to make sure that you put a therefore statement or a concluding statement. Therefore, the cost for 25 students is $350. So make sure you have all of those things in there in order to get a complete answer and to get a level 4 in your work. So that's it for number 5. For number 6, this question is dealing with a fitness club that offers 2 types of memberships. So there's membership A, which is $4 per visit. And then there's membership B. And membership B is a flat fee of $12. So no matter what, you have to pay this flat fee. It's like an initial fee, and then plus $2 per visit. So we're going to see if they give us some letters as part of the equation. And if I look at the rest of question 6, it doesn't give me any letters to use, but it does say write an equation relating the cost. So we're going to use C. Let C represent the cost, and the units for cost is in dollars. And then it says relating the cost and the number of visits. So we're going to use an N again to represent the number of visits. So all the words are already in the problem. As long as you pay attention to the words, then you should know which variables to use. So I do not want you doing this. Anything, no graphs, no nothing, unless